It's an interesting question. I probably haven't thought about it too much. I'd say that I'm ultimately like a very focused and high energy type of person. If you ask my wife, she would definitely say that. We're on different channels that we wake up first thing in the morning. I used to, and I think a lot of early stage entrepreneurs get distracted by all the shiny things. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey in 2008, I would have my phone with, all my list of hundreds of ideas that probably a lot of entrepreneurs have done at one point in their life.
Yep.
And what I've realized is that
Nic, welcome back to the Mere Mortals podcast. We've had you on now. This is the third time, right? 2020, 2022, now 2024. So it's a good sort of cadence. So welcome back. There's lots of things that we can talk about. Going back, I won't cover most of the bases, which is Search Factory, all the previous businesses that you sort of started up and didn't succeed, the going back to Flight Centre, I believe, going back to marketing, and all the way now with Midnight Health. We'll get into that, but if you want to go check that out, Immortalize, go back to the previous podcasts. What I wanted to check with you was, and begin here, you are, like me now, a dad, right? You're a father. Is it one or two?
just one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
So with being a dad, how do you balance being a businessman, being busy, building and looking after a pretty substantial company, with being that? How does that look like from a balance in your life?
It's certainly challenging. And I think the other two variables that you need to layer on top of that is also being a husband and then finding time for yourself. Because there are obviously other two important components to your life, I think, alongside business. So then when you throw a child into the mix of that, maybe you've got the other two sorted alongside business, and then you throw a child into the mix. That's a whole other variable, right? And so I certainly find it challenging. I think the thing that's most important for me is like the quality of time you spend with them as opposed to the quantity of time that you spend with them. I read a piece from somebody very early in my journey as a father that was talking about, ensuring that you are spending engaged time with your children in the time that you're with them. So, if you've got a limited time frame in an evening or, on a weekend that you're spending with your child, make sure you're engaged in them in that moment, as opposed to sitting there on your phone or ignoring them, or, just being present, but not being mentally present. So for me, that's like the thing that I have kind of like tried to take into my life as a father, and making sure that I'm sort of allocating enough time to my daughter to read with her, every night, and shower or bath her, if it hasn't been done before I get home, and try to allocate time on the weekends to make sure I take her out to do something fun. So for me, it's about trying to spend as much quality time with them as you can and create those memories, and ensure that she doesn't think of me as a father that was absent through her childhood.
The quality aspect, and I'll ask you this because I would at first glance would think for yourself quality from a business lens, as in the quality amount of time that you have to spend with however many hours you could actually spend, is probably a real easy thing for you now with that many years on the track run. With yourself in fatherhood space, how's it felt like for yourself? You've had to kind of retrospect on sometimes the failures, or look at the learnings and go, oh, actually this is a little bit different in terms of what it means to be spending quality here, and actually pull yourself away from business or other things around, like looking after yourself, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, I think you find that balance over time for sure. I think especially when I started my first businesses, you feel that 120% of your time is like focused on that startup and working on it, and your quality time is like almost all put into that, and whatever's left at the end is what you give to yourself or your partner or whatever. As I realized over the years that the thing that needs to get done in your inbox can be done tomorrow most of the time. How do I actually plan my time so that I can do this for a long period of time and not get burnt out? A lot of founders get burnt out, regardless of whether they're balancing a child or a wife or a personal life outside of their business. A lot of founders will go super hard for a certain period of time, and then they get to the point where they're burnt out and they're actually less productive, and the quality of their own output has actually diminished over time. And they think that, and some people when they start their journey, they think that hours put into something results in success or quality, whereas it's not always the case. And I mean, I say that with a view that I probably work a lot more than the average person, but at the same time, it's still balancing, going, well, weekends are to myself now. A public holiday I will take off. It's like when I get home at nights now, I try and make sure I spend time with the family and my daughter. and spend a little time working outside of those periods that I have to. And so I think that it's important just going, how do you compartmentalize your time so that you inject the kind of make the highest quality decisions or effort into what you're working on, whether it's in a business through these hours, whether it's being a dad through these hours, or spending time with your friends on the weekend. It's like, how do you make sure you split all of that up so that you get the most out of all of those individual things?
Yeah.
And one thing I was speaking to someone about recently is like I probably live a very organized life, as in I live in my calendar, and I'm like, well, cool. Because of having a child, it's like I used to say go to jiu-jitsu after work sometimes, where I'm like, well, now the only time I can do that is in the morning. So I get up at 4:30 and go train, first thing in the morning, and then I'm in the office by 7. And then work through that so then I can have that time available to me at night. And then when it gets to weekends, by the time I get to probably Wednesday or Thursday, I'm like, what am I doing this weekend? And I'm almost like filling out my calendar for Saturday, Sunday. So it's like I'm almost trying to organize, structure, and maximize the amount of time that I have available to get the most out of it.
And look, an allocated life, in some ways, some people go, well, where's the flexibility? Where's the serendipity? Where's all the other things? But at the same time, with everything that you're listing out there, if you don't do that, one of those is going to get missed. And from what you're telling me there, it's, well, when you start dropping either the jiu-jitsu or the spending time with the family or spending time with your wife in a one-on-one situation, and then the business, once something starts to go, it's obvious. And you can see the problems that then arise from that. If it's not allocated, you're going to miss it. In that description, again, I can transpose what I think I view as who is Nic Blair. But to you, how would you describe who Nic Blair is, I guess, to individuals who probably don't know you in a deeper level, right? They've seen the face, Entrepreneur of the Year type of awards and Midnight Health and things beforehand. Beyond that layer, how would you describe yourself as?
That's an interesting question. I probably haven't thought about it too much. I'd say that I'm ultimately like a very focused and high energy type of person. If you ask my wife, she would definitely say that. We're on different channels when we wake up first thing in the morning. I think my daughter's a little bit more like me than her in that regard. Yes. But also that's a 2.5-year-old, I suppose, as well. But I'm certainly I've spent a lot of my life always being very focused on what I'm trying to achieve, focused on outcomes that I'm trying to deliver, and not just from a business perspective, but a personal perspective as well. I think it floats into things that I do outside of work. We're kind of very driven to achieve those things. And for me, I thrive on challenges, problem solving, and goals. And so for me as an individual, that's what I'm always spending my time working towards. And I find that I've found periods over the years with different businesses, like say Search Factory, for example, where I kind of reached the point where I found that not so challenging anymore. It was at the scale where we had sort of, managerial layer that was looking after a lot of the day-to-day workings of the business. Sure, we could have had a look at how we maybe expanded more into other markets or all the rest of it. But I kind of found that the challenge sort of went away in that business. And despite the fact that they were still, a growing business and doing well financially, for me, that wasn't it started to remove the, kind of mental stimulus that I'm looking for in my daily life. And so that's why I find myself loving doing high risk things, like taking a concept about a business in a category that I know nothing about and trying to just go all in to see if I can do it. And it's that is the thing that keeps me going. And then, it might be in jiu-jitsu. And it's like, well, can I spend the 10 years it takes to do this to get a black belt? So I find myself always kind of wanting to set these goals and these targets and focusing my time and attention onto that. And I think that's kind of is me in business sense, but then also me in my personal life as well.
Yeah. And I think it naturally exposes itself in the business lens, how you act in your own personal way. I'm assuming, jiu-jitsu, you're a black belt right now in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm assuming that's been quite a few years in the making, right? I'm not sure if you have the mindset of, I want to be, I think it's the coral belt, or you have to be 30 years of black belt, something like that, right? Yeah. Where it's okay, I've got goals. Touching on goals, how do you then personally, do you sit down and specifically break them down for yourself? Do you have a flexible view of what those goals look like? How do you set up the goal structure in either your personal life or in a business context?
Yeah, well, that's actually one thing that I think is kind of important in the way that I've changed over time, because I think that I set a long-term goal and I take the mentality of what do I need to do or continue to do to achieve that, as opposed to setting a time frame to achieve something. Because the thing that I've learned over the years is that the challenges always pop up. So the journey is never as straightforward as you want it to be, whether it's something that you want to do personally or in business. So from my perspective, it's maintaining a side of focus on that, and continuing to work towards whatever that goal might be, but not necessarily setting a time frame where you say, I need, I've failed if I haven't achieved this by a certain point. And I think that's like a challenge that many people encounter because they feel like they've failed something or they haven't got there. Whereas, I've realized over the years that you should just keep your sights pointed on that goal, and all the things that come up along the way and interfere with that journey, or maybe push a milestone out by 12 months or 3 years or 5 years. It doesn't matter if you're just focused on the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And then that allows you to kind of approach the journey with a different mindset than saying, I've failed if I haven't achieved X in 2 years' time. Because the reality is whatever plan you lay out, there's something that's going to get in the way of that, so you can't think about it that way.
Obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday quote. But how do you then, you mentioned 2 years and 3 years, 5 years. I've got a personal challenge when it comes to goals like that. And I've had to structure some things in my own way to avoid that, which is I've got this symptom where I will kind of fancy myself at something different. 2 months go by, I'm really enjoying whatever, Olympic lifting or something else. 2 months later, I veer away. I'm going to do something else. I just like doing different things like that. But some of these goals, long-term goals, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, how do you keep yourself? Is it something that you have to consciously veer yourself back to maintain that North Star, that particular goal? Or are you quite naturally pretty focused in on what that looks like, and whatever the obstacles or other opportunities that may arise, you naturally kind of deflect them? Or if not, how do you deal with other opportunities that may come about?
Yeah, well, I think there's kind of two aspects to that. I think one, I used to, and I think a lot of early stage entrepreneurs get distracted by all the shiny things. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey in 2008, I would have my phone with, all my list of hundreds of ideas that probably a lot of entrepreneurs have done at one point in their life. And what I've realized is that you're actually better to put more time and energy into one thing than, put 10% of your time into 10 things, because, ultimately you do a pretty crappy job at those 10 things, until you focus all that time and energy into one bigger goal that you focus on. I think you get a better outcome that way. So I've found that now I try to set less goals, if anything, and then just put my time and energy into trying to deliver them. The thing that I'll say alongside that with your personal goals, when you're talking about the fact that you like to, learn new things, every few months, I think you need to go into those activities or those hobbies or the new quest that you're on with a mindset of like what you're trying to achieve out of that. So I definitely do things like, I got a motocross bike and I ride that once probably every 12 to 18 months. And so I suck every time I get out there. I really enjoy it, but my fitness on the bike is terrible. And I'm and I still keep it because it's not worth enough to probably sell. And so I keep it, I go out ride every now and then. But I'm happy with that. I don't want to have to try and be, the next Chad Reed or a professional motocross rider. I'm happy to jump out, go out with some friends every now and then, go for a ride. It's I'm happy to just get that out of that activity. Whereas, jiu-jitsu, I want to commit to that for multiple reasons, because it's fitness and exercise and, it's good for me mentally. And I find that doing that on a regular basis, helps me with more than just learning the art of jiu-jitsu. So I think that my mentality with that is very different to me, riding my motocross bike or, I like to go out and do car racing, for example, and, get out and do sprints and try and hit better lap times. But it's I still only do that, 4 or 5 times a year. So I'm not committing enough time and energy to that. So I think you almost need to set your expectations and goals to be aligned at the start of doing something, so where how much energy and time you need to put into it.
That's a really good answer in that expectations setting. My going in, I mentioned Olympic lifting. Going into it, I was training at a great gym here in Brisbane where there's a lot of quite elite Olympic lifters, and so the immediate mindset is, well, comparison, and I can do that. I can reach these top levels, and then you see what it needs, the expectation of to get to those sort of levels. What does that look like? What am I then taking away energy from other areas, right? And I think that's important. It's the expectation, and also what energy are you taking away from other areas of your life?
Yeah, and one thing that I'm that it still bugs me was, I set myself a goal to actually do a mixed martial arts fight in a cage.
Oh yeah.
So I had this plan between selling Search Factory, starting Midnight Health, and having a baby, where I could train 10 times a week, which I was doing, preparing myself to do this. And again, it's expectations. I'd love to just do this once.
Yeah.
What a rush.
Go through the journey. Yeah.
But I'm not going to go try and become a UFC fighter. But so I was training, super hard for that. at the point where I was about to start getting matched up for a fight. That was about 8 weeks out, and then I injured my knee at a jiu-jitsu competition, and that kind of put me out of that. And so then I had a decent recovery. Then we got pregnant, and then health started to get busier, and so I kind of never got to tick that off. And that bugs me now, like 3 years later, 4 years later, and it's still going to bug me for probably like.
Do you think personally, years. As who you are, it'll be one of those things that'll a space time will come in your life, and you'll go, I need to attempt that again.
Maybe. Well, so the challenge for me right now is time. Right? And again, you go, when you break up your schedule, I'm like, I wouldn't have the time to, because that's something that you want to make sure you give it the appropriate level of time and energy, so don't go in there and hurt yourself. It's a dangerous activity. So for me, it's like it really comes down to when I would be at a point in my life where I could dedicate enough time to it. Because you don't want to go in half-assed and end up in a bad position.
No, well, so, like fighting it, and most I think probably in life, you don't want to, and when it's important and you care about it, you don't want to go in there half-assed.
So for me, maybe it'd be like a debut at my 45th. Or something like that.
That'll be something fun. There you go. Something to look forward to in a couple of years.
Well, I think also like some of those like local events, they can find other people who are in a similar boat, who are like, hey, another 45-year-old guy who wants to make his debut.
Well, exactly.
Cool.
You don't want to be in there with someone who's up and rising. He wants to be at a UFC level. He's going to come and smack you. You want someone who let's have the enjoyment that comes from this. Leading into the rounds, leading into like the practice, being there, present, being fit, and being able to do it.
So maybe in like 4 more podcasts time together, we can
that'll be discussed. That'll be like the post Nic Blair interview photo. Yeah. So Midnight Health, right? Again, there's been a pretty big journey. I guess last time we talked about it, which was 2022, we were at your offices. We were talking around the size of the company, which I believe it was around 50 staff at that current time. You'd had a pretty substantial NIB incoming funding to sort of grow the company. I believe Yuli and Steiger were around, but they were at its beginnings, right? Where would you say Midnight Health as an overall sits now? And then really let's talk about probably what's the most of interest right now, HubPass.
Yeah, so we're at the stage, we're definitely in kind of scale up stage now. So, we're at the team, we're at about 65 people now. I think we were talking earlier about the fact that, don't view trying to scale the team up much more, say over the next 12 to 24 months. The reality is we've got a good foundation of software engineers, medical team, operations team, marketing that can, and product that can kind of deliver what we need to. That's on our roadmap. The area where we have had to scale up, probably mostly in that new team members, is in the operational side. So as the number of customers coming through has continued to scale, we've had the natural bottlenecks of, resource from a clinician perspective, resource in patient support. And so we've had to kind of start filling up the operational teams to meet the demand of customers that are coming through. We're at the point now where we have seen, since the last time I saw you, pretty significant growth over the last 2 years. So you're at the point now we've seen over 200,000 customers through the platform. I think public knowledge that I think we did $9 million revenue in FY23. We did $26 million in FY24. We're now pretty much on track to probably close to double that again this year. So the business from a financial metrics performance is going really well. Everything's heading in the right direction. But we've definitely got many more things on our roadmap. And that's what excites me about this business, to the points I was making earlier. There's sort of no sight of when we would get to a point where we're kind of done building. You might recall that, our vision is in building access to a complete health ecosystem. And so while we started with 5 or 6 products, back in 2021, we're now at the point where we've got 25 different condition-based products. We've got just recently launched general telehealth, so we can kind of consult for anything, do pathology, imaging, and specialist referrals. We've got an over-the-counter store for pharmacy products. And so we see ourselves, continuing to build new capabilities around things like allied health specialists, digital health programs to support lifestyle and behavioral change, continuing to bring, focus on new conditions, new chronic diseases, things like that, as we build more capabilities. So that's like a very long-term journey. And at this stage feels like a never-ending one. And then the other thing that we're really excited about now is the move into the corporate health space. So to date, we launched with Yuli and Stagger to begin with. Hub.health is the brand that we launched about 2 years ago, so probably around the time that we last spoke. And that's focused on kind of a more mass market brand. So it's sort of gender agnostic, age agnostic, caters for families coming in to access the medications and treatments that we're offering, and right through to other new markets that we can enter into. And so we've been a direct-to-consumer business essentially until this year. And now we've just launched Hub Pass for Business, which allows employers to pay for their employees to get access to hub.health, get access to unlimited telehealth consultations, free shipping, discounts on pharmacy medications, the ability to kind of skip the queue and get priority access to clinicians. And I think there's a really exciting opportunity for us to move from being direct-to-consumer business into a B2B business as well and provide services to corporates. So that for me right now is the thing that I'm most excited about. I think in the international markets like the US, Canada, UK, giving employees access to primary care is actually pretty standard with corporate health insurance. Whereas in the Australian market, you don't have access to primary care because it's government funded. Private health insurers aren't allowed to pay for it. And I think there's this big gap where the cost of getting access to care is increasing. And that means that there's a role for somebody like us to play in coming in to disrupt that and allowing employers to actually help fund access to clinical services for their employees.
Yeah. The interesting thing on Hub, I just want to confirm Hub Pass there, and especially you guys from a business, is that located specifically to Australia and New Zealand, or is that international as well at the current time?
Just Australia for now. Yeah. So the challenge with being a healthcare provider is that we kind of need to build new clinical workforces, new pharmacy partnerships as we expand into other markets, meet new regulations. So it's unfortunately makes it harder to scale internationally, but probably creates a few barriers for competitors coming in here at the same time. So we're aiming to kind of nail this in the Australian market first, but then there is potential to move to a New Zealand market with it because NIB, our investor, has got a New Zealand presence. And then beyond that, who knows, we could look to move into other markets as well.
Now, with being basically a first mover in any market also comes along some nasty challenges or some thorns or some obstacles. What are those? What were they? Let's just say, what were they for Midnight Health? Are they still present? What was the biggest challenge? How'd you guys get around it?
Look, I think it is a challenge when you're essentially being a bit of a disruptor in a market. And we're certainly not the only digital health company in Australia, but I think we're all focusing similar challenges. And the reality is there's a pre-existing regulatory environment and lobbying groups that support certain aspects of the healthcare industry. And trying to innovate in this space comes with a lot of challenges from those types of groups who represent clinicians who kind of have a view that they want to maintain the status quo and keep healthcare delivery the same as it has been for the last 50 years. And so I think we've faced a few things around changes from the medical board to guidelines around asynchronous consultations. The TGA has made recommended changes around things like providing access to compounded medications for people who are seeking weight loss treatment. So as any of these digital health initiatives start to scale up, the regulators are pretty quick to try and find ways to, for lack of a better word, stop the progression of those things, as opposed to consult with the industry and look at how we can do things better. I think that's a challenge for the Australian market. The reality is that when you look to markets like the UK and Europe and other countries, they're building regulatory frameworks that actually support innovation and digital healthcare delivery, whereas Australia has almost adopted a bit of a default no stance in some areas of the Australian landscape. So it does make it hard, and you do have these challenges to face on a daily basis. And the reality is we are actually all for good clinical governance frameworks, good regulatory frameworks, and we want to engage with the regulatory bodies and the medical board and the likes to say, hey, how can we sit down together and actually build a good set of standards that help to adopt and move things forward and ensure that patients are safe. The reality is we just don't have that framework now. And so, we're almost getting to the point where we go, well, how do we actually be the people who drive that forward and propose something, to the government, to these bodies and say, well, let's work on this. And, here's a starting point.
Which is a big challenge. And I wanted to ask you, for yourself then, for Midnight Health, where do you sit now as the most valuable player, or how do you yourself sit in giving the most value for the company? Is it being also of a spokesperson and helping out to have those conversations at a more influential level that kind of sits at that area? Are you still in a very operational level mindset? Where do you sit currently when it comes to Midnight Health? And I'm just trying to understand, is that probably taking up quite a lot of your time in being that sort of spokesperson to help drive those conversations?
A little bit, but your role as a founder definitely changes over time. When it's your co-founder and two staff, you're kind of doing everything.
Yeah, you're doing everything. Yeah.
And as the business has grown to the point where it's at now, I spend a lot of my time working with NIB, our investor, and being the person who kind of leads our relationship with them. So, attending their strategy days, board sessions, those types of things, ensuring that, we've got the support from them that we need as we progress, particularly as we've encountered some of these challenges along the way with regulatory changes, guidelines changes that could potentially have an impact on the business, and we need the board support to make our own decision. So I spent a lot of time engaging with them, engaging with other industry stakeholders. So I see longer term, it's certainly more advocacy as well, particularly as we try to engage people like, the Australian Patients Association, for example, who we've joined recently, to say and sit down with them and go, well, how can we actually try and have a seat at the table when they're making these changes to some of these frameworks that impact the way that we can operate as a business. So I certainly see myself spending more and more time doing those types of things. And the other one is that you spend a lot of time as a founder doing the things, in the early stage of a business. As the business grows, it becomes more about how do you bring the best people together and align them, their ideologies, align the vision that the business has, and how do we all work towards our North Star or what our goals are in the next 6 to 12 months. And really it just becomes making sure that we're get the right people on the ship and point the ship at where we're trying to go, and make sure that there's nothing that gets in the way of achieving that. And I think you find when you attract the people who enjoy startup life, sometimes they're also the same people who do get distracted by the shiny things. So you're conscious of that yourself. And so you go, how do I make sure I align these amazing group of people into one goal, or what the next goal is before we move to the one that follows, as opposed to make sure we're off, doing a whole bunch of things that aren't achieving a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And was that easy for you? And what I'm asking for is, was it easy for you to go, oh, yep, I can build a team, have the right people, and step out of the day-to-day or the operation or the things that you are the founder, you've likely built up a lot of these tacit knowledge within the company. Is it quite natural based on the previous sort of businesses that you were also running to kind of, step away, let other people do it? Or do you have a tendency to want to lean in, touch base, help out, cover the day-to-day?
I still work pretty hands-on with the leadership team, but at the same time, I'm definitely somebody that's good at giving people autonomy and a license to fail and make decisions themselves.
Yeah, okay.
That's one thing that I think I'm good at that some founders are not good at.
Lots are. Now, personally, one individual, I'm going to send this podcast afterwards, who is terrible with it, right? Building a really fast-growing company that wants to do everything himself to every hire that's coming through, right? And it's a challenge.
One of the guys in our leadership team actually said to me a couple of months ago that when he first joined the business, I essentially said to him that, when you come into the team, you kind of have full autonomy to make decisions. I'll give you that, but you take the wins with the losses. But also you have a license to fail and see what works best in your department. And he actually said to me, he goes, there was a key moment. I can't remember what it was related to, but there was a key moment where I said to him, well, it's your decision, go and make it. And that was a few months after I'd hired him. He goes, a lot of founders and CEOs will tell you that you have autonomy, but the reality is you don't.
No.
But there's definitely a key moment in his sort of working relationship with me where he realized that I actually meant that. And we very much give our team, the ability to kind of make their own decisions and own their outcomes. And they're the people that we want in the business. And my view is that I think that's the only way you can scale to the size that you're trying to get to. And I also never view I should never be the smartest person in the room at a certain discipline if I've hired the right people.
Absolutely.
And so my view is I'm trying to sell the vision and the dream to the people who are fantastic at what they do and bring them onto the ship and join the journey with us. So my view is I want to have a group of people I can trust and lean on to actually make those decisions themselves.
There's a lot of knowledge that you're bringing out, right? And I'm trying to also understand, because it would be, I think people would also be curious to know for yourself, who now where you sit in terms of from a growth of these businesses where Midnight Health currently sits, everything's going well and rosy, and obviously there's day-to-day challenge, but things are looking and they're going the right path. Where now do you sit or look towards for either more mentorship, knowledge, that sort of information? Is it an individual? Is it different knowledge sources that you now look to in terms of, how do I go and take the next step, or how do I go do this? Either publicly known people or people who are maybe a little bit more in the shadows that people don't really know about, or if it's just information sources. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, it's not. I've never really had one-to-one mentors like some people really advocate for, and I could certainly see the value in it for sure. It just sort of hasn't really found that as something that has kind of been on my path, I suppose. But I'm always looking to try and learn from people who have done or who have achieved where I'm trying to get to. What's my goal? We talked earlier. It's like, well, where am I trying to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Whether it's with my existing business, another business at some point, I'm like, who are the people who have actually done those things that I'm trying to do myself? And how do I go and learn from those people?
Yeah.
And so I find that, I try to put myself out into environments where I'll meet those people or attend events or conferences where I can hear from them. So, I met some fantastic people, for example, speaking at AFR Entrepreneur Summit a few months ago. I try and put myself in those environments where I'll speak on a panel and then meet an awesome group of people who have gone and done things that are significantly bigger than me. How do I build relationships with people like that? How do I go to put myself at events like in this month now I'm going to TechCrunch Disrupt again for probably like the 5th time in San Francisco. And so because that's just a room full of people who have achieved outstanding things. And so for me, it's like, how do you learn from all these people who have achieved something bigger than you or achieve the goal that you want to achieve and put yourself in those environments?
Yeah, being in the position, I guess, to have those serendipitous connections and conversations, because ultimately for yourself and the percentage of the people who you might meet or interact to, as you say, are going to have either achieved similar success that you're looking for, perhaps, or something related, is going to be lower and lower percentage until you start going to those locations where those are.
And the one thing I'll add to that, I don't think and I don't look at that as like a success from a dollar perspective as well. It's more like finding like-minded people who are working on cool things that I like that have scaled them up to certain points. And that's I think the key thing, because, I could go meet a lawyer, for example, who's made a heap of money as a lawyer and built a big law firm, but that doesn't interest me at all.
No,
I'm like, who are the people who are like building cool things and interesting things, and they're the people that I want to meet.
Well, and this is sometimes the saying of, don't meet your heroes, right? Sometimes you meet these individuals and you hear a percentage of who they are, what they've done, and then you go and find out all of the underlying reality, and maybe they've done certain things or morally just go around some particular things to achieve what they've done. And fantastic, that's an achievement and success in its own right. But then everything else kind of doesn't then match up to maybe what your expectation was, right? But for yourself then, in that, have you encountered anyone who, in your journey now, you've gone, I saw these individuals as I was going up, and now I got to meet them and see them, and you go, actually, there's some signs here that, no, there's some pitfalls here on the way up that I really have to watch out for, because I've seen it now in other areas or in other individuals who I thought had it all figured out.
Oh, I think that's almost everybody that I've met that's had success. I think that the reality is that there's very few founders, and I probably almost haven't met a single founder who just started a journey and everything went right for. And so if anything, the thing that I've learned, and this is probably why I've changed the way I view goals, as we talked about timelines and expectations, it's like, I've now actually met that almost every person has gone through this, even if they've built $1 billion business, it's like they've actually had all of the same challenges. They from the outside, you might look at that person and go, wow, they've just had the perfect journey to building $1 billion company. But almost nobody has actually followed that path. And so it's, I think, and startups and founders are glamorized in the press with movies and all the rest of it to suggest that everyone's gone on a Mark Zuckerberg journey of launching a business, and then it's taken off, and the rest is history. And I think the reality is that almost no founders go through that journey, and I'm sure even Mark Zuckerberg has had a million different challenges along the way, right? And so that's probably the common theme is that no one has had a clear path.
No one's had a straight path. There's always been some sort of challenge. Which is it's interesting. The more that obviously in now saying about it, but the reality is, and from where you capture it, where it's media or an article, you can only see a sliver of the reality of what you see, and then to see all the same challenges are just amplified by the dollar value that you have for the people that you're looking after, then just expounds from that. What do people perhaps not know about you then, Nic, in terms of a lot of the conversations that you might have? Now, this might be, as you say, at the AFI Enterprise Summit, or it might be at conversations just at the surface level with people. What do people sometimes not understand about you? Something that you discuss maybe just more in family and friends, you're like, people just don't get this about me.
Well, I don't know if I'd say they don't get this about me, but maybe things people don't know about me is that my wife would say I collect lots of random junk. So I've got, and sometimes it pays off. So I've got a pretty big collection of Funko Pop vinyls.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so, so they actually I started buying them early on because I thought they were pretty cool. But then over time, some of them have started to grow in value pretty significantly. So, I bought them all for about $15 each. And some of them that I bought very early on, they stopped production because it was early in some of them are like $1,000 each.
Yeah.
So, I've got kind of like a $15,000 collection of these like random plastic toys that my wife thinks are junk.
Where you carry them around house to house and they're like, well, are we taking this everywhere?
Yeah. They're staying with me. And I have no intention of reselling them.
Sure.
That's not why I bought them. But I guess I could one day if I needed them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find myself liking buying and collecting random things. Like I've kind of always done that as a child as well, like collections of basketball cards and Tarzos, things like that. So I've just always bought and collected stuff. So that's something interesting. And I try to sometimes think like, how does that relate back to the rest of my life? I don't even know how, to be honest. I think just random things just tend to interest me if they're different.
It sounds like a collector's mindset in particular. But, and this is the interesting thing that I do know about you that people may not know, is that you like to drive, you have a selection of cars, and not just a supercar, right? A Lamborghini Huracan STO, but also just fun Asian cars, right? That race cars. And you like to drive them. You drive them on a daily basis, depending on the day, depending on the car, whatever it may be, as opposed to being like a show car where you kind of leave it alone and don't have any mileage on it, which is in itself quite good. So while you may be a collector, it seems like you also utilize these various things that you actually have as well, which is really, really interesting. The Huracan STO, you've now had it for, when we chatted in 2022, I think you were going to get it in August, but I'm assuming you had it now for over a year now.
It's actually just hit 12 months.
Just hit 12 months.
12 months.
There you go. Okay.
Got an email the other day to say it's...
there you go. It's ready for it. What are your thoughts on that in comparison to the previous one? Was it worth the wait? What are your general thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's an entirely different car than my last Huracan. I expected it to be better, but not to the extent that it is, which, as you can imagine, is fantastic when you've gone and bought it and made the decision to
because you sold it. Because you made the decision and then sold the previous one. Yeah. And had to wait till the new one sort of came in.
Yeah, there's no going back at that point. But honestly, it's like just a whole different car. Like it handles actually the biggest shock on it is the brakes, which is not the thing that you would think, really stands out when you go and drive a new car. But the braking on that is insane. It just feels lighter. It brakes so good. It handles a lot better than the previous one. They're both rear wheel drives, but it's like almost just a completely different car. And so I've only had it out on the track once, and that was for a Lamborghini drive day. It was actually raining that night. And honestly, I think I could do a faster lap in the wet in the STO than I could do in the dry on my old Huracan.
Wow.
It's just that good. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Now, I kind of heard the story, but I wanted to hear it from you directly. Were you at all thinking of actually getting a Ferrari? Was this correct? And then you went over to the US and you tried out both and you were like, no, it's hands down the Huracan. Was that what happened?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I know it's still at a Ferrari garage now. It's probably another thing that my goal would be a car collection. Yeah, I've got a few cars, as you know, but I want to keep building that out. So I'm not even someone who's tied to a certain brand. So there's certainly a handful of Ferraris that I'd like to add to the garage. But when it came to the decision of one or the other, the Lamborghini was definitely more my style. It was louder, a bit more raw, more fun to drive.
More colourful.
The noise of the V10 and the Lamborghinis is insane. And so that's pretty much why I decided that had to be the choice. Yeah.
Now, again, collections, and you mentioned your wife earlier before as well. What is across all the collections? Is she also comfortable in you bringing along all the cars to all the different places? Have you ever had to have the conversation between the cars and the other collections? Like, okay, no, you can't just go and get another Asian car or something like that. Has there ever had to be that conversation?
She's actually really good with that.
Okay.
I think she's realized after spending many years with me, and we met back in 2007 when I just graduated uni. So she's been on this whole journey with me from, getting my first marketing job right through to health today. And so I think she's realized that they're the things that I enjoy. That's what I work for, to bring these things into my life that I can enjoy and have a good time with. And I'd be happy with or without them. But at the same time, they're the things that, I feel that is like a reward for putting in work and setting yourself goals and go, well, I'm going to go work super hard and try and earn whatever I can because I want to add this Lamborghini to the garage. And so they're the driving forces behind what allow you to not only get a reward for the work that you've done, but then also like enjoy aspects of your life moving forward from that. You know, you go to definitely when I go, sometimes I'll drive the Lamborghini to work. Like when I drive it to work and drive it home on a day, especially if like, you know, tough days in the office, you're like, it honestly is better.
Enjoyable drive home.
It's a great drive home.
Yeah, brings the joy that driving a Lamborghini does.
Yeah, and I think she understands that. She understands what motivates me, what my motivations are, and the things that will help me keep that drive and motivation to keep doing what I'm doing. And so she's a big supporter of that. She was like, I was deciding whether to get the STO or not, because obviously it was a bit more expensive than the old Huracan. She was like all for it. She's like, yeah, let's go. She was saying to do it before I decided. I was
okay.
So she's all for it. She's all for building the car collection.
I love that. Enjoy it. Okay. Now these final two questions, feel free to take a little bit of time because I didn't prep you for these particular questions, but it's something that I'm interested in and perhaps other individuals are. And then also now back on the family side of things. One is, what are your thoughts on basically passing on generational wealth, right? What does that look like? Have you had a thought around, no, I'm going to basically spend it all as it goes towards the end and just use it up? Or is it on the other extreme where it's, invest, grow, and then be able to pass that down into the family structure as it looks like? Where do you sit in that? Because I think a lot of people that perhaps you get past the foundational of building a company, success comes along with that, which is a multitude of things. And then problems arise later down when you've built a family and whatnot because there's confusion or where that looks like from a generational thing. Have you guys thought about it? Have you thought about it? Do you have a strong view either way?
I wouldn't say I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but as you were asking the question, the thing that I feel, there's two parts to the answer. I think you should try and be in a position, if you can, where you can certainly make sure that the life of your child is comfortable, if you can. Not everyone can be in that position. So if I am in that position and whenever I pass, then I'll be grateful that I can give that to my daughter. But at the same time, I actually think it's more important to teach generational skills. And so as you're speaking about generational wealth, I was thinking, what's actually more important for me is to teach her how to do the same thing. So it's important to me that she grows up and has a good work ethic, that she, seeks out problem solving, if that's the path that she wishes to take. I think it would be fantastic if I could leave her with the knowledge and the skills to be able to actually get a step ahead herself, regardless of whether she got into money or not.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's almost even more important. But at the same time, if I can be in a position to give her the capital and the resources so that she can actually, have even higher chance of success in whatever she chooses to do, then to me that's important as well.
And then the last one here is fast forward to your daughter being 18 years old. Two pieces.
Scary thought.
Yeah, scary. Scary thought. At that point, what is the one generational skill you wish that she'll have a plenty already to kind of take on the world? And what would you like her to view you as that you would then find in that to be either proud or like, yes, I successfully was able to be this in her eyes?
The skill for her, I think, is not related to a skill to build a business or anything like that. I think it's the skill to be confident, be happy, and do the things that she enjoys the most. From my perspective, she doesn't need to be an entrepreneur. She might find happiness in something else. And I think at the end of the day, if you can be happy, then I think that's living a fulfilling life. So for me, I think it's for her. It's like I never want her to be in a position where she isn't happy with her life. And of course, we always go through our ups and downs, but it's like she needs to have the confidence in herself to change her path if it's not heading in the direction that she wants, whether it's career-wise or I never want her to feel as if she can't do something because I want her to do something else, within reason, obviously. She wants to live a life of crime. I'd probably suggest that she doesn't.
Maybe pull it back a little bit. Yeah.
But the reality is, I want to just follow a path that makes her happy, that gives her a fulfilling life. And the reality is that financial stresses can sometimes lead to unhappiness. And so, that's why I think sometimes we find that ensuring that you're financially secure definitely helps with leading a happier life. You don't have to worry about some of those things. But at the end of the day, as long as she's happy, I think that's the main thing. That's she's a very happy girl now. She's bright, bubbly, energetic, and that's the thing that I hope that she never loses as she grows up. And the world tarnishes her.
Yeah. Keep that as pure as possible, and then let the tarnishing just go as slow as possible.
Yeah.
What about the second view in terms of at 18? Then she looks at you and goes, she's going to be proud of you, and she wants to call out maybe again a skill or a feature or something. What would success be like for you, for her to say?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I want her to remember me as someone who, who worked hard and was motivated. I think that's like what's important, right? Because I don't think that, like, my view of a lot of entrepreneurs who have success and even people in pursuits of life, unrelated to business, your motivation and your work ethic to achieve those goals is the force in most times that actually helps someone to achieve it. So I think the reality is that the smartest person in the room doesn't always win, or the person who's the most naturally gifted or talented. You see it in sports all the time. You see it in business. It's the person who wants it the most. The person who's motivated enough to achieve that. And so I think ultimately, like, that's the thing that I want her to remember me for and see me as a role model for, because I think, life is tough. She's going to find situations where she ends up where she, things are tough and the going is tough. And it's like, as long as you can look forward and have the motivation to keep going and strive for the goals, whatever she wants to achieve that will lead her to happiness, I think that's the driving force that will get her there. So, that's how I want her to remember me as well, because I want that to be one of the principles that she adopts into her own life.
Absolutely. With that, I'm going to leave it there. Nic, really appreciated jumping on for the Mere Mortals podcast and taking the time out of your day. Again, for individuals, if you want to check out Midnight Health or Nic Blair on LinkedIn, it's probably going to be the best way for people to see your journey as things continue. Probably catch up in about 2 years' time and see how everything is, but hopefully everything goes well with Midnight Health. Already is, but hopefully all the other little obstacles that pop up, things go well in the end. So I appreciate it, Nic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, and I'll see you in another 2 years for part number 4.